So for doing a Sarasinorum setup, really, it's actually quite simple. All you're going to want is bedding. I actually like Lugarti's, which is right here, but you can totally use cocoa husk as well. You're going to want some sphagnum moss. You can either get the green stuff or you can get the regular brand that you see everywhere. Really, other than that, all you're going to want is, if you're going to do some plants, you might want a couple of plants. That right there's a snake plant, and I have some pothos right here. And you're going to want some cork bark. That really is the basic build. From there, you can go wherever you want. But for starters, I'm just going to start dumping some bedding into the setup. So at this point, I've got my debris in there. If you take a look, my substrate's at about a little over an inch, probably about an inch and a half. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sphagnum moss and I'm just going to put a nice little, probably about a ½ inch layer all the way around before I put a second layer of substrate. I'm also going to figure out where I want to put plants at this point. And now we have our sphagnum moss layer. It's all dry right now. What I'll probably do here in a moment is kind of moisten it all down, but I want to put another layer of the substrate on it, and then I'll just kind of mix it up so that it's kind of buried down in there. This actually serves a couple purposes, but one really good side effect of this I've learned is it's kind of a tracker. If you notice sphagnum moss up on top, it's a clue that they've dug, and at least with Sarasinorum, gargoyles, a couple others, good chance that there's an egg down there. It doesn't work so well with lychees because they like to dig crazy, and you'll find yourself chasing empty holes quite a bit before she actually lays. So now we have our layer on top of our layer, and all I'm going to do is kind of just really softly kind of just mix it all in so that you get kind of a dirty moss type thing going. I don't know if you could tell, but that layer, the second layer of substrate, was nothing more than enough to just cover the moss. It wasn't like a full layer. If you see me put my hand through, you just see it. It's right underneath. And I'm just kind of mixing it all in. Don't worry about super even distribution. I mean, there should be enough. If you've covered the whole tank, there should be enough to at least have some everywhere. Enough that you would notice, and enough to distribute humidity pretty evenly. Excuse my gasping, but I'm reaching down in here. So that's kind of what you're looking at now. Now at this point, this substrate, just like this, is actually pretty good for even keeping quite a few plants. You're not limited on your plants as long as you're keeping the misting up. And I've just found that that little bit of sphagnum moss will make a lot of difference with some plants, particularly the wandering Jew, some of the other ones that you'd find on like your dart frog stations. So at any rate, that's how that's going to look now. Now I'm just going to go ahead and decide what plants I'm putting in, and I'll be right back. So at this point, we just have our plants in here. They're primarily up on the top, barely down in. And the reason for that is because as I add the second and final layer of substrate, it'll go ahead and plant them in there better. But that's what I'm doing right now. I did add a fake plant, as you can see. Part of that's because I've learned the hard way that if you add too much live plant, trying to make it look all full ground right from the beginning, you'll find yourself with too much plant in there like in a month. So instead, I'm just putting some pothos down at the bottom and one snake plant right there. You can barely see it in front of the fake plant. And as those grow, eventually I'll remove the fake plant because I'm going to give them stuff to climb, cork bark for them to just kind of attach and raise up on. So that's as far as I've gotten now. So I'm just going to add the substrate. Okay, so now we have our plants. We have a couple of pieces of cork bark. And I mean, really at this point, that's what you're going to do is add some cork bark. I have one against the side because I like it when they hide on the side. I mean, it's kind of cool. You get to see them at least if you want. But I also have that one back there, and that's actually kind of important. The reason being, if I ever needed to put something in there like a plant. I often will build. I have other builds where I've done this. I'll build like a pyramid. I only did this one really to demonstrate. It's really not going to do much because it's right up against the background. But the whole point is to create kind of like a trellis path for your mister when it's hitting it to make it come back down to the plant. Play with that, and you'll find that some of your plants that require a little more water don't necessarily need to be in a crazy humid tank if you've got your water flowing down onto them. So what I'm going to do now is just add some decorative but helpful pieces of wood. I have a nice little piece of mopani here. Just going to kind of figure out how I want that in there, and take it from there, basically. But really, this and a couple of hides, a couple of cork tubes, that really is all you need for a basic build. You're not going to kill your animal as long as you're making sure you do your misting. The new Caledonian geckos really don't require a whole lot. So I'm just going to play with the wood now and see what comes up, what I do with it, and I'll take a video once I'm done. Keep in mind the plants all look kind of dead right now. That's just because they've all just been moved and misted and kind of shuffled around. I'll probably take one shot in the morning just to kind of show how they come to life once there's lights on again and once they've settled in. So I'll be back in a moment. So now we have the build basically with some cork bark in there. As you can see, I've got a nice big piece back in the back, nice little entrance. Got a piece here towards the front that's got a dual entrance. And of course they have little hides underneath here and there. But the bottom line is there's going to be plenty of places for them to hide if they want to, or to sit up on top. Once they get comfortable, you'll find them mostly on the glass or on the cork bark. I don't really use vines for Sarasinorum. If this was a gargoyle or a Crested or a couple of other species I keep, then yeah, I would probably have some vines in here. But these guys really, for the most part, they're on the glass 90% of the time, or on the cork bark. So at this point, that really is all you'd need. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the light here. So there you go. At this point, that's all you would need. Now this is just to have your Sarasinorum or your other whatever geckos you wanted to do, but this really is kind of how I started almost every tank, honestly, when I first was putting things together. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of do a couple little things that I do that help my Sarasinorum to just hatch in the tank. I don't ever remove the eggs anymore. If I'm removing eggs, it's because I did a clean out of a tank and there was just some eggs in there. So just keep in mind that if you're just keeping one as a pet, or if you're, I mean, you can still have an egg or two come out. I just have a much higher rate with what I'm about to do next. So. Okay, so here we are. What I've done, that's really the only difference, and you can expand on this any way you'd like to, is I've added just some of that moss that I showed at the beginning, the green sphagnum moss. The big difference is this stuff's a little more stable. It's not so shredded, so you can get nice little clusters wherever you want to. And what I found is some of my geckos, like my Goniosaurus, the cave geckos, my Metratus, you can use leaf litter for them to lay under. They'll dig under that, and that kind of helps, keep it moist. What I found is that with my Saras and a couple other of my new Caledonian geckos, they'll actually use this. So if you look carefully, there's spots like down in there where I have, and right there, right down there, where they can dig if they choose to lay. And they'll just dig underneath the moss and lay their eggs underneath. With some geckos, it's actually really nice because they'll actually lay almost right on top. You don't really have to look very hard if you're looking for eggs. But because of the fact that I'm not going to be pulling my eggs, this is just a better setup for me. I have a higher hatch rate. In fact, I'm pretty much at this point at 100%. Only other things I might have added if I was going heavy would be a little bit of charcoal, bamboo charcoal, not barbecue charcoal. That's also part of the ABG build. This is not an ABG build. It's not really a bio build, honestly. But I found that EBG. A lot of people don't know this. It actually stands for the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, and we're not really doing gardens. We're doing geckos. It's not that it's bad. It's just that it's more than you need just for your geckos to do pretty well. So I will probably add some isopods, and that always ends up happening whether I plan to or not. I end up adding them, but just a good idea of a build. If you, like I said, if you were doing a gargoyle or crested, you'd probably add a vine or two. And like I said, I'll probably take a shot of this in the morning, but this just gives you an idea. And so here we are the next day. As mentioned, the Sarasinorum's hanging on to the glass in the mist tube, but some of the plants are already starting to rise back up. They usually do after a day or so. Just kind of slowly coming into what you would hope for. So at any rate, that's kind of what I do. One thing I forgot to mention is that the Lugarti's does, the substrate that I use does seem to do a little bit better with the plants than Cocoa Husk. Cocoa Husk does definitely limit how my plants do anyway. Everybody has different experiences, but that's just me at any rate. So anyways, feel free to comment or throw any questions out there.